It was Tuesday evening, and the autumn wind was getting cold. Lisa grabbed her running shoes from near the front door. She was 17 and loved her evening runs through the quiet streets of their neighborhood. Her mother, Anna, was getting ready for her night shift at the local medical center where she worked as a nurse. "I'll be back in an hour, Mom," Lisa called out as she tied her shoelaces. The house felt warm and cozy, with the smell of dinner still hanging in the air. Anna looked at her daughter with that worried expression mothers always have. "Be careful, honey. It's getting dark earlier now. Maybe take your phone with you?" Lisa laughed and hugged her mother. "Mom, I run the same route every day. I know every street, every corner. Don't worry so much." She left her phone on the kitchen counter, thinking she wouldn't need it for just 1 hour. That was the last time Anna saw her daughter walk out their front door. When Anna returned home from her 12-hour shift the next morning, she expected to find Lisa getting ready for school. Instead, she found an empty house. Lisa's bed hadn't been slept in. Her school bag was still sitting by the door. Her phone was exactly where she had left it the night before. At first, Anna thought maybe Lisa had stayed at a friend's house. But when she started making calls, nobody had seen her daughter. Lisa's best friend hadn't heard from her. Her teachers said she never showed up for her first class. Panic started to set in. Anna called the police, but they told her she had to wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. Those were the longest 24 hours of Anna's life. She drove through every street in their neighborhood calling Lisa's name. She checked the park where Lisa sometimes stopped to rest. She asked every neighbor if they had seen her daughter. Nobody had seen anything. When the police finally took her report, Anna could see in their eyes that they thought Lisa was just another teenage girl who had run away from home. They asked questions that made Anna's heart break. "Did you and your daughter fight recently? Was she having problems at school? Does she have a boyfriend you disapprove of?" Anna answered every question, trying to make them understand that Lisa would never just leave. They were close. Lisa told her everything. They had their small arguments like all mothers and daughters, but nothing serious. Lisa was a good student, looking forward to college. She had dreams of becoming a teacher. Days turned into weeks, and the police investigation seemed to slow down. Anna took time off work to search for her daughter. She made hundreds of copies of Lisa's photo and put them on every telephone pole, store window, and community board she could find. The picture showed Lisa's bright smile and kind eyes, the same eyes that looked just like Anna's. Local news stations covered the story for a few days. Anna appeared on television, begging for anyone with information to come forward. She talked about how Lisa always helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, how she volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends, how she planned to study education in college. "My daughter is not the kind of person who would just disappear," Anna said to the cameras, her voice shaking. "Someone out there knows something. Please, if you've seen her, if you know anything at all, please help us bring her home." The community rallied around Anna at first. Neighbors organized search parties. Local businesses donated money for reward posters. Volunteers handed out flyers at shopping centers and bus stops. For a few weeks, it felt like the whole town was looking for Lisa. But as time passed and no new information came forward, people started to move on with their lives. The search parties got smaller. The phone calls from concerned neighbors became less frequent. Anna understood that people had their own families to worry about, their own problems to solve, but it still hurt. Anna converted Lisa's bedroom into what she called her command center. She covered the walls with maps, marking every place they had searched. She had timeline charts showing Lisa's last known movements. She kept copies of every police report, every interview, every piece of information about her daughter's case. Sleep became impossible. Anna would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering where her daughter was. Was she safe? Was she scared? Was she trying to come home? The questions never stopped racing through her mind. Anna lost weight because food had no taste anymore. Everything reminded her of Lisa. The empty coffee cup Lisa always left in the sink after breakfast. The television shows they used to watch together on Sunday afternoons. The sound of other teenagers laughing in the street. Friends tried to help, but Anna found it hard to talk about anything except finding Lisa. Some people started to avoid her because every conversation eventually turned to her missing daughter. Anna didn't blame them, but it made her feel more alone. At work, when Anna finally returned, her colleagues were supportive, but worried. They could see she wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating properly, wasn't taking care of herself. Her supervisor gently suggested she consider counseling, but Anna refused. She didn't have time for therapy. She needed to find her daughter. Anna started, keeping a journal, writing down every memory she had of Lisa, every conversation they'd shared, every plan they'd made for the future. She was afraid that if she didn't write these things down, she might forget them. She wrote about Lisa's first day of school, about teaching her to ride a bike, about their weekend trips to the lake. The police kept the case open, but Anna could tell they had moved on to other priorities. New crimes happened every day. Other families needed help. Anna understood this, but it didn't make it any easier to accept. 6 months after Lisa disappeared, Anna was still putting up new posters every week, still checking with hospitals and shelters, still hoping for a phone call. That would change everything. She had spent all her savings on private investigators and reward money. She had taken on extra shifts at the hospital to pay the bills. Some nights, Anna would sit in Lisa's room, holding her daughter's favorite sweater, breathing in the faint smell that still reminded her of home. She would look at Lisa's books, her stuffed animals from childhood, her plans for college applications that would never be completed. Anna never stopped believing that somewhere out there, her daughter was alive and trying to come home. This hope was the only thing that kept her going through the darkest days. She promised herself that no matter how long it took, no matter how hard it became, she would never stop looking for Lisa. She just had to hold on and keep believing that. One day, her daughter would walk through that front door again. That same cold Tuesday evening, 60-year-old Robert was driving home from the cemetery. He made this trip every week, visiting his late wife's grave with fresh flowers and updates about his quiet life. The road was dark and empty, with only his headlights cutting through the autumn fog. Robert had been alone for 3 years now, ever since his wife passed away from a long illness. Their own daughter had died in an accident many years before, and since then, it had just been him and his wife living on their small farm outside town. Now it was just him, the chickens, and a vegetable garden that seemed too big for one person. As he drove along the winding country road, something caught his eye. A figure was walking unsteadily along the shoulder, stumbling slightly with each step. At first, Robert thought it might be someone whose car had broken down, but as he got closer, his headlights revealed a young girl, maybe 17 or 18, walking in torn clothes. Robert slowed down and pulled over. Through his passenger window, he could see the girl more clearly. Her face was dirty, her hair tangled, and she had what looked like bruises on her arms. She was shivering in the cold night air, wearing only a thin jacket that was ripped at the shoulder. "Miss, are you okay?" Robert called out through his open window. The girl looked at him with confused, frightened eyes. She seemed to be trying to focus, like she was having trouble understanding where she was or what was happening. When she tried to speak, her words came out jumbled and unclear. I don't know. Where am I?" she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. Robert's heart sank. This young girl was clearly in trouble. She looked hurt, lost, and scared. Every instinct told him to help, but he also knew how complicated this situation could become. He was a single older man finding a young girl alone on a dark road. People might not understand his intentions, but looking at her standing there in the cold, Robert couldn't just drive away. She reminded him of his own daughter at that age, vulnerable and needing protection. He got out of his truck and approached her slowly, keeping his hands visible and his voice calm. "My name is Robert. I'm not going to hurt you. You look like you need help. Are you injured?" The girl tried to take a step toward him, but stumbled. Robert caught her arm gently, and that's when he noticed she had a large bump on the back of her head. Her pupils looked different sizes, and she seemed to be having trouble staying focused on his face. "Can you tell me your name?" Robert asked softly. The girl stared at him blankly. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, looking frustrated and scared. I can't remember. Why can't I remember?" Robert realized this young woman had a serious head injury. She needed medical attention immediately. But when he mentioned taking her to a hospital, the girl became agitated and started backing away from him. "No, please, no doctors, no police," she said, panic rising in her voice. "They'll find me. Please don't let them find me." Robert didn't know what to make of her reaction, but her fear seemed genuine. Something bad had clearly happened to her, and she was terrified of getting help through normal channels. He found himself in an impossible situation. The right thing to do would be to call an ambulance and the police immediately. But this frightened girl was begging him not to. Okay, calm down," Robert said gently. "Nobody's going to force you to do anything. But you're hurt, and it's cold out here. At least let me take you somewhere warm where we can figure out what to do." The girl looked at him with those confused, scared eyes. Robert could see her trying to make a decision through the fog of her injury. Finally, she nodded slightly. Robert helped her into his truck, being careful not to move too quickly or do anything that might frighten her more. He turned up the heat and gave her his jacket to wrap around herself. As they drove toward his farm, the girl fell asleep against the passenger window, exhausted from whatever ordeal she had been through. During the 20-minute drive home, Robert's mind raced with questions and worries. Who was this girl? What had happened to her? Why was she so afraid of getting help? And what was he getting himself into by taking her to his home instead of directly to the authorities? When they reached his small farmhouse, Robert gently woke the girl and helped her inside. She moved slowly, like everything hurt. In the light of his kitchen, Robert could see her injuries more clearly. Besides the head wound, she had scrapes on her knees and hands, and what looked like rope burns around her wrists. Robert had learned basic first aid during his years working construction, and later when caring for his sick wife. He cleaned the girl's wounds carefully and gave her some of his wife's old clothes to change into. The girl accepted his help but remained quiet and confused. "What's your name?" Robert asked again as she sat at his kitchen table sipping warm soup. She looked at him with frustration. "I keep trying to remember, but it's all fuzzy. I remember running and someone grabbing me and then nothing. Why can't I remember who I am?" Robert explained that head injuries sometimes caused memory problems and that her memories might come back with time and rest. But privately, he was very worried. This level of confusion suggested a serious concussion, possibly worse. That first night. Robert set up his spare bedroom for the girl. It had been his daughter's room years ago and still had some of her old things. The girl, who said she couldn't remember her own name, seemed grateful for the safe, quiet space. Robert lay awake most of the night, wondering what he should do. Every hour that passed without calling the police made his situation more complicated. But every time he considered making that call, he remembered the terror in the girl's eyes when she begged him not to involve authorities. By morning, Robert had made a decision that would change both their lives. He would give her time to heal and remember who she was before involving anyone else. It seemed like the kind thing to do, but Robert had no idea how long that would take, or how complicated things were about to become. He just knew that this frightened Hurt young woman needed someone to protect her, and he was the only one who could do it right now. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the injured girl began to heal in Robert's quiet farmhouse. Since she couldn't remember her real name, she asked Robert to call her Amy. It was the first name that felt right to her, though she couldn't explain why. Robert's daily routine changed completely. He had lived alone for 3 years, used to the silence and solitude of farm life. Now he woke up each morning thinking about someone else's needs. He made breakfast for 2, checked on Amy's healing wounds, and worried about her health like a father would worry about his daughter. Amy slept a lot during those first few weeks. The doctor books Robert borrowed from the library told him that rest was important for head injuries. When she was awake, she moved slowly and carefully, often touching the back of her head where the bump was gradually getting smaller. "Does it hurt today?" Robert would ask each morning as they sat at the kitchen table. "Less than yesterday," Amy usually answered, though Robert could see in her eyes that the pain was still there. What worried him more was the sadness that seemed to grow deeper each day. Robert's farm sat on 40 acres of rolling hills, far from any neighbors. The closest house was 2 miles away. For years, Robert had appreciated this privacy. Now he realized it was exactly what Amy needed, a safe place where she could heal without pressure or questions from the outside world. As Amy grew stronger, she began to help around the house. At first, it was simple things like folding laundry or setting the table. Robert worried she was pushing herself too hard, but Amy insisted that staying busy helped her feel less confused about her missing memories. "I like having something to do with my hands," she told Robert one afternoon as she helped him prepare vegetables from his garden. "It makes me feel normal, I guess." Robert understood that feeling. After his wife died, keeping busy with farm, work had been the only thing that got him through those first terrible months of grief. Amy discovered she had a natural talent in the kitchen. She couldn't remember learning to cook, but somehow her hands knew how to knead bread dough and season soup. Robert's meals had been simple and lonely for years, usually just whatever was easiest to prepare for one person. Now Amy filled his kitchen with the smells of homemade bread and hearty stews. "Maybe I learned from my mother," Amy said one evening as they shared a meal she had prepared. "I wish I could remember her face. Do you think she's looking for me?" These were the moments that broke Robert's heart. He could see Amy struggling with fragments of memories that wouldn't quite come together. Sometimes she would stop in the middle of doing something and stare off into the distance, as if trying to grab hold of a thought that kept slipping away. Robert started teaching Amy about farm life, partly to keep her mind occupied and partly because he enjoyed having someone to share his knowledge with. He showed her how to collect eggs from the chickens, how to tell when the vegetables in the garden were ready to harvest, and how to preserve food for the winter months. Amy took to these lessons eagerly. She seemed to find peace in the simple, predictable rhythms of farm life. The chickens made her laugh, the first real laughter Robert had heard from her. She named each one and talked to them like they were pets rather than livestock. "This one's my favorite," Amy said, holding a red hen that seemed unusually calm in her arms. "She reminds me of someone, but I can't remember who." As autumn turned to winter, Amy's physical injuries healed, but her memory remained mostly blank. She could remember basic skills, how to read and write, how to cook and clean, general knowledge about the world. But her personal memories, her family, her friends, her life before that night on the road, remained locked away. Robert found himself growing attached to Amy in a way that both comforted and worried him. She filled the empty spaces in his life that he had learned to ignore. Their evening conversations by the fireplace, her laughter when she successfully baked her first pie, her gentle way of caring for the animals, all of this brought warmth back into his lonely house. But Robert knew this situation couldn't last forever. Every day that passed without contacting authorities made his decision more difficult to explain. He had started as Amy's rescuer, but now he felt like her protector and maybe even her family. Amy seemed to sense his internal struggle. "Robert," she said one snowy evening as they sat by the fire, "I know this isn't normal, what we're doing here. A girl my age living with a man your age, no questions asked. But I want you to know that I've never felt unsafe with you. Not once." Robert felt tears in his eyes. "You remind me so much of my daughter. She would have been about your age now if she had lived. Taking care of you, it makes me feel like I have a purpose again." Amy reached over and squeezed his hand. "You saved my life that night, and not just from whatever happened to me before. You've given me a safe place to heal, and that's something I'll never forget, even if I never remember anything else." Winter deepened, and their little household settled into comfortable routines. Amy had taken over most of the cooking and helped with the lighter farm chores. Robert taught her to knit, using patterns his late wife had left behind. In the evenings, they would read books from Robert's small library or work on jigsaw puzzles. But sometimes, late at night, Robert would hear Amy crying in her room. When he asked about it, she would say the tears came from nowhere, like grief for people she couldn't remember. "I know I'm missing something important," Amy told him. "Someone out there loves me, and they probably think I'm gone forever. That thought makes me so sad. But I can't remember who they are or how to find them." Robert knew that Amy was right. Somewhere someone was grieving for her, just as he had grieved for his own lost daughter. But Amy had become so important to him now that the thought of losing her felt unbearable. For the first time in years, Robert's house felt like a home again. Spring arrived on Robert's farm with the sound of birds returning and the smell of fresh earth. Amy had been living with him for almost 2 years now. She had grown from a confused, frightened girl into a confident young woman who knew every corner of the farm and every habit of the animals they cared for together. But with the warming weather came something unexpected, dreams that felt too real to be just dreams. Amy woke up one April morning with tears on her cheeks and a clear image in her mind. A woman's face, kind and worried, with eyes that looked exactly like Amy's own eyes. In the dream, this woman was calling a name over and over again. "Lisa! Lisa, where are you?" Amy sat up in bed, her heart racing. The name felt familiar in a way that made her chest tight with emotion. She had been Amy for so long now that she had almost forgotten there was another name, another life, waiting somewhere in her blocked memories. At breakfast, Robert noticed Amy's distracted mood. "Everything okay this morning? You look like you didn't sleep well." "I had a dream," Amy said slowly, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "There was a woman calling for someone named Lisa. She looked like she could be my mother." Robert felt his stomach drop. He had been dreading this day for months, knowing it would eventually come. Amy's memories were starting to return, and when they did, everything would change. Over the next few weeks, the dreams became more frequent and more detailed. Amy started remembering fragments of a different life. A small apartment with yellow curtains in the kitchen, the sound of a television playing in the background. The feeling of being hugged by someone who smelled like vanilla perfume and hospital soap. "Robert," Amy said one evening as they worked in the vegetable garden, "I think my real name might be Lisa. It feels right when I say it in my head." Robert nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "How does that make you feel?" "Scared," Lisa admitted. "If my name is Lisa, then Amy isn't real. This whole life we've built here, it's been based on someone who doesn't exist." Robert stopped weeding and looked at her. "The person you are here, the kindness you show, the way you care for the animals, the bread you bake every week, that's all real. A name doesn't change who you've become." But Lisa wasn't convinced. Each returned memory felt like losing a piece of the life she had grown to love. She remembered running through neighborhood streets, which meant she hadn't always lived on a farm. She remembered studying for tests, which meant she had been a student somewhere. She remembered the worry lines around her mother's eyes, which meant someone had been taking care of her before Robert found her. The breakthrough came on a rainy afternoon in May. Lisa was organizing books in Robert's small library when she found an old cookbook that had belonged to his wife. As she flipped through the pages, looking at handwritten notes in the margins, she suddenly smelled something that triggered a flood of memories. She was 17 again, standing in a kitchen with yellow curtains, helping her mother prepare dinner. After a long day at work, her mother's name was Anna, and she worked at the medical center downtown. They lived in a small apartment, just the two of them, and they watched movies together every weekend. Lisa sank into Robert's old armchair, overwhelmed by the rush of returning memories. She remembered her evening runs through the neighborhood. She remembered the night she disappeared, the fog, the feeling of being followed, someone grabbing her from behind. After that, everything was still blank until the moment Robert found her on that dark road. But most importantly, she remembered her mother's face clearly now. Anna, who worked double shifts to support them both. Anna, who helped her with homework, and worried about her walking alone after dark. Anna, who must be completely heartbroken thinking her daughter was gone forever. When Robert came in from feeding the chickens, he found Lisa crying in his chair, holding the cookbook. "It's all coming." "Back," she whispered. "My mother's name is Anna. We live in town about an hour from here. She's probably been looking for me this whole time." Robert sat down across from her, his heart breaking for both of them. "Tell me about her." Lisa spent the rest of the afternoon sharing her recovered memories. She told Robert about Anna's gentle way of taking care of people, about their weekend traditions, about the plans they had made for Lisa's college education. With each memory, Lisa felt more guilty about the pain her disappearance must have caused. "She must think I'm dead," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "It's been almost 2 years, Robert. She probably had a funeral for me. She probably cries herself to sleep every night." Robert knew this was true, and he felt his own guilt weighing heavily on his shoulders. "Lisa, I need to tell you something. When I first found you, I thought about looking for missing person reports, but you were so scared, and I was worried about your safety. As time went on, I got selfish. I didn't want to lose you." Lisa looked at him with understanding rather than anger. "You saved my life. Whatever happened to me that night, whoever hurt me, you protected me from that. You gave me time to heal." "But your mother," Robert started. "My mother has been suffering while I've been safe and happy here," Lisa finished. "That's not fair to her, and it's not fair to you either. You shouldn't have to carry this secret anymore." They spent the evening talking about what to do next. Lisa was terrified of leaving the safety of the farm, but she knew she couldn't let her mother continue to grieve for her. Robert was terrified of being seen as the man who kept a daughter away from her mother, but he knew Lisa was right. Together, they searched online for news about Lisa's disappearance. What they found broke both their hearts. Article after article about Anna's tireless search for her daughter. Television interviews where Anna begged for information. Photos of missing person posters that had never been taken down. "Look at her," Lisa whispered, pointing to a photo of Anna holding one of the posters. "She looks like she's aged 10 years. I did that to her." "No," Robert said firmly. "Whatever happened to you that night did that to her. You were the victim, not the cause." Lisa knew Robert was right, but the guilt still felt overwhelming. She had found peace and healing on the farm while her mother lived in daily agony. Now, she had to find the courage to go home and face what her disappearance had done to the person who loved her most. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She walked through the farmhouse, touching things she might never see again. The kitchen where she had learned to make bread. The chair by the window where she read books on quiet afternoons. The room where Robert had patiently helped her heal from trauma she still couldn't fully remember. Tomorrow, they would start making plans for her return home. But tonight, Lisa allowed herself to grieve for the simple, peaceful life she was about to leave behind. The morning sun was bright and warm as Robert drove his old truck through the familiar streets of Lisa's neighborhood. Lisa sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap, wearing the same blue dress she had worn to help Robert sell vegetables at the farmer's market just a few weeks ago. In the back seat sat a small bag with the few belongings she wanted to take home, including the cookbook that had triggered her memories. They had spent 3 days planning this moment. Lisa had practiced what she would say to her mother dozens of times. Robert had prepared his own explanation, knowing he would face difficult questions about why he hadn't brought Lisa home sooner. Both of them were nervous about how Anna would react to seeing her daughter after 2 years of believing she might be dead. "Turn left here," Lisa said quietly, recognizing the street where she used to run every evening. Everything looked exactly the same, but smaller somehow, as if her memories had made everything bigger than it really was. As they drove past the park where Lisa used to stop to rest during her runs, she saw that someone had placed a small memorial bench there with a plaque that read, "In memory of those who are missing but not forgotten." Lisa wondered if her mother had anything to do with that bench. "It's the yellow house with the white porch," Lisa said, pointing ahead. Her voice was barely a whisper. Robert pulled into the driveway of a small, neat house with flower boxes under the windows. Lisa's hands were shaking now. Through the front window, she could see a woman moving around inside, and her heart started racing. "What if she doesn't recognize me?" Lisa asked, though she knew that was impossible. "What if she's angry that I didn't come home sooner?" "She's your mother," Robert said gently. "She's been waiting for this day for 2 years. Nothing else will matter to her." They walked up the front steps together, Robert carrying Lisa's bag. Lisa's knees felt weak as she reached for the doorbell, but before she could press it, the front door opened. Anna stood in the doorway wearing a faded hospital uniform, looking like she had just gotten home from work. She was thinner than Lisa remembered, with new lines around her eyes and gray streaks in her hair that hadn't been there before. For a moment, neither woman moved. Then recognition hit Anna like a physical blow. Her face went completely white, and she grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. "Lisa?" Anna's voice was barely a whisper. "Is it really you?" "Mother, I have returned," Lisa said, the words coming out in a rush of tears and emotion. Anna collapsed to her knees right there, in the doorway, her hands reaching out toward her daughter. Lisa fell into her mother's arms, and they both sobbed with relief and joy, and 2 years' worth of pain finally being released. Robert stood back, watching this reunion he had both hoped for and dreaded. He could see neighbors starting to notice the commotion, some of them pointing and staring in disbelief. "My baby, my baby," Anna kept repeating, holding Lisa's face in her hands as if she needed to make sure this was real. "I knew you were alive. I never stopped believing you would come home." After several minutes of tears and embraces, Anna finally noticed Robert standing quietly beside them. "This man has taken great care of me," Lisa said, following her mother's gaze. "Mom, this is Robert. He saved my life." Anna stood up slowly, studying Robert's face. Lisa could see her mother's mind working, trying to understand why this stranger had brought her daughter home instead of the police, trying to figure out where Lisa had been for 2 years. "Please come inside," Anna said, though her voice was cautious now. "I think we have a lot to talk about." The 3 of them sat in Anna's small living room, which Lisa now remembered in perfect detail. Her school pictures still lined the mantelpiece. Her favorite books were still on the shelf by the window. Everything was exactly as she had left it, as if Anna had been preserving it like a shrine. Robert began explaining how he had found Lisa that night, injured and confused, with no memory of who she was or where she belonged. He described her head, injury, and her terror of hospitals and police. Anna listened without interrupting, her hand never leaving Lisa's arm, as if she was afraid her daughter might disappear again. "I know I should have brought her to the authorities immediately," Robert said, his voice heavy with guilt. "But she was so frightened, and she was hurt so badly. I thought I was protecting her." Anna was quiet for a long time after Robert finished his story. Lisa could see her mother struggling with complicated emotions. Gratitude that someone had cared for her daughter, but anger that Lisa had been so close while Anna suffered through the worst 2 years of her life. "You couldn't remember me at all?" Anna asked Lisa, her voice breaking. "Not at first," Lisa admitted. "The head injury took away all my personal memories. I knew how to walk and talk and read, but I couldn't remember my name or where I lived, or that I had a mother who loved me." Lisa told Anna about life on the farm, about how Robert had patiently helped her heal, about the peaceful routines that had given her stability while her brain recovered. She described the dreams that had started bringing her memories back, and the moment she remembered Anna's face clearly. "I wanted to come home as soon as I remembered you," Lisa said. "I've been so worried about what you've been going through. I saw the news articles online. I know you never stopped looking for me." Anna reached over and touched the small scar on the back of Lisa's head, where her injury had been. "Someone hurt you that night? Do you remember what happened?" Lisa shook her head. "That part is still blank. I remember going for my run, and then nothing until Robert found me on the road. The doctor said some memories might never come back." Anna turned to Robert. "Thank you for taking care of my daughter. I can see that she's healthy and safe, and I know that's because of you. But I need you to understand what these 2 years have been like for me." Anna described the sleepless nights, the endless searching, the hope that turned to despair and back to hope again. She talked about quitting her second job to have more time to look for Lisa, about the savings account she had emptied to pay for private investigators, about the support groups for families of missing persons. "I understand," Robert said quietly, "and I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I know now that I should have found a way to get her back to you sooner." As the afternoon wore on, the tension in the room gradually eased. Anna could see that Robert genuinely cared about Lisa, and that he had provided her with a safe, loving environment during her recovery. Robert could see that Anna was exactly the kind of mother Lisa had described, devoted, caring, and strong enough to never give up hope. "What happens now?" Anna asked eventually. Lisa looked back and forth between the two most important people in her life. "I want to stay here with you, Mom. This is my home. But Robert has become family to me, too. He taught me so much about taking care of myself and finding peace in simple things." Robert smiled sadly. "You belong here with your mother. I always knew this day would come." "But you don't have to disappear from our lives," Anna said, surprising both Lisa and Robert. "You brought my daughter home to me. That makes you family, too." As evening approached, Robert prepared to return to his farm. Lisa walked him to his truck, not ready to say goodbye to the man who had been her protector and father figure for 2 years. "Will you visit us?" Lisa asked. "If your mother doesn't mind having an old farmer around sometimes," Robert said, hugging her tightly. "I think she'd like that," Lisa said. "And I want to keep visiting the farm too, if that's okay. I want to check on the chickens and help with the garden." Robert drove away that evening knowing that his quiet, lonely life had been changed forever. He had lost the daughter he never expected to have, but he had gained something else: the knowledge that he was capable of loving and being loved, and that he had helped heal someone who desperately needed healing. Lisa spent her first night back in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories of the girl she used to be. Tomorrow, she would start the complicated process of rebuilding her old life while integrating everything she had learned during her time away. But tonight, she fell asleep listening to the sound of her mother moving around the house. Finally, at peace, knowing that the most important person in her world was no longer suffering because of her absence.